All right, so we are live. Y'all, it's been a hot minute. I know I haven't been live in a long time. And I miss y'all. I do. And I thought I'd come back on the screen and do my best to make this a regular because with lives, you got to plan it and everything. I got to plan it in advance. And sometimes like this topic tonight came to me and I was like, I really want to talk about this. Um, and I just wanted to just go live versus kind of like recording it, editing it, doing all that other stuff because that can also create a lot of resistance with me. So I try to choose the path of least resistance as much as possible. And but here we are. Come on in, come and spend some time with me. Uh, Today's tea is lemongrass tea. So I'm just talking until people start coming in. Uh, so today's lemongrass tea. Actually, you might even actually hear the planes because right now we are in Bangkok, not Bangkok, Thailand. Sorry, we are in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and the planes are just flying overhead. We're like not too far from the airport, and so we are in the flight path. So you might hear some some planes flying overhead, but it's all good. We're gonna work through it. But yeah, tonight is lemongrass tea. When we're in Bangkok, me and my partner, we found this amazing health food spot, and they had all these remedies, teas, herbs, and I was just like, oh my god, we were both like salivating from the. Did I say that right? Salivating, sal. Anyway, tell me if I said that right. But yeah, so I spent like over $100 over there and just bought a whole bunch of things. And this week, well, this bag that I'm actually trying to get through is lemongrass tea. And I cannot buy any more teas because I have so many bags and my baggage is heavy. So I gotta stop buying teas, unfortunately. Anyway, so I want to get started tonight. And I really thank you for being here, for some of you who are here. And if you're on the replay, if you're part of the replay gang, definitely, put in the comments. Let me know that you're catching the replay and that let me know what kind of things come up for you in this live. But let me just get right into it. And if you have any questions, definitely drop them in the live. If you have comments or anything like that, feel free to do that. But the topic that I wanted to discuss tonight, and I'll have my notes here, so you'll see me sometimes glance over, but just to keep me on track because I'm someone that goes off on a tangent and then forget what I'm talking about. So I need a bit of structure. So tonight's topic is all about why healing isn't passive, the truth that no one tells you. And the reason I thought about this is because I've been working with a lot more clients, doing a lot more one-on-one work. And if you've been following my journey for a little bit, I took a pause on one-on-one work last year just to kind of like recalibrate, reassess. And I started to pick up one-on-one work towards the end of the year. At least the beginning of the year I stopped. And I'm realizing there are common themes, right? And one of the things that came up for me is the idea that healing isn't passive. And I want to clarify some things maybe that you haven't yet heard because I know for my healing journey, it was active like nobody's business. And so I want to make some distinctions that I think is going to be very helpful for you as you go on your healing journey, just to keep notice on a few things, right? Because if we don't understand that this is an active process, we're just going to just keep digging ourselves in a ditch. And we're going to continue to, repeat patterns that just keep coming back and keep making us stuck. So, one of the biggest myths that I've heard a lot, and I used to believe this myself until I started to go through my own healing journey. And I was like, oh my God, this stuff still hurts. This stuff still impacts me. And we've been told that like time heals all wounds. But what if, again, that's one of the biggest myths about healing? And so here's the truth, and this is just from personal experience. Healing doesn't happen just because time passes, okay? It happens when you actively engage in the process. If time alone worked, then people would not still be, carrying wounds well into their 40s, 50s, 60s, and even 70s. Okay. So in this video, we're really going to expose why passive healing keeps you stuck and what you can do about it. Um, and so you're going to learn a little bit about why, again, time does not heal all wounds and why it's a big total lie and what actually creates healing. You're also going to learn a bit about how trauma rewires your brain and body and how to break that kind of cycle. And I'm not a somatic therapist. So somatic is just like working with the body. I'm not, but there's some tips I learned along the way just from my own personal healing, some things that I've seen that work with my clients that I'm going to share with you, and sort of the hidden reason why you keep repeating emotional patterns. And I think this will be very helpful. And why resistance continues to show up when you try to heal, because it's going to continue to be there. And I've actually spent the first 2 months really talking and diving deep about resistance, because I realize that under the core of everything, when I'm working with my clients, it's quite difficult to go deep unless we just address some of the resistance. Anyway, and lastly, we're going to talk about how to take real action towards healing today. And so, if you've ever felt stuck in your healing journey, this live is for you. Okay. So don't just watch, engage, be an active participant on this live, and drop your biggest insight in the comments and let's talk. So, as always, subscribe for more content like this, and breakthroughs about resistance, healing deeply, and just reclaiming your life, taking back your power. And this is a journey that we're doing together. So just make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell, all the good stuff that keeps you connected. I used to do a lot of lives on Instagram, and I don't do them as much simply because the algorithm, I guess, has changed and no one's really watching long, I was going to curse, long videos anymore. And so I just kind of like said, you know what, let me just take all my energy and pour it into YouTube. And I'll still be hanging around on Instagram, but like this is where you want to connect. And of course, if you want to even connect deeper, just join my free newsletter, Thrive. But anyway, so let's get started. So again, you've heard that time heals all wounds. We know that's a lie. It would feel very comforting if we knew that a year or two from now, we'd feel so much better if we just waited out. But time does not heal all wounds, engagement does. And as I said earlier, people in their 40s, 50s are still carrying around childhood wounds like they're fresh scars, and repeating the same toxic cycles, stuck in the same limiting beliefs. And I've engaged with people like that, whether it's family members or just people I don't even know or just met, who look like they just traveled back in time when they're in a stressful situation. And it's like, okay, that's something that's still a wound for you, right? And it's something that has not been addressed. And so, a question for you is, be honest. Have you ever caught yourself thinking, if I just wait it out, I'll feel better eventually? So, just drop a one in the comments, in the chat. I mean, if you've been there, that's something that I can definitely relate to. But here's what no one tells you: healing, again, it's not passive. It's not something that just happens over time. It's something that you have to actively engage in. I had someone once tell me, I don't get it. I I've been journaling about my childhood for years. Why am I still stuck? And so I asked them, okay, but when was the last time you actually felt the emotion instead of just describing it on paper? Especially if you're an intellectual and you intellectualize a lot of things, journaling will help in maybe the release portion, but not the processing portion, because there are a lot of people who come into therapy who, are self aware and know how to talk about sort of their issues and the things that they're stuck in, yet they don't have any deep insight or any connection because of the fact that they're intellectualizing a lot of the things that they've learned over time. And so yeah, so I asked about emotions because like a big part of healing is being connected, mind body and heart connection. because there's a huge difference, like I said, between analyzing pain and processing it. And so this is again where most people get stuck. They think that they're healing because they're reflecting or journaling about their past, but what they're just doing is circling the wound without actually ever entering it. So drop a one in the chat if this just called you out with love, of course. You know, I'm all about being gentle with y'all. You know what I'm saying? But I gotta give it a little. I don't want to say tough love, but that grandma love. You know. Anyway, so let's break this down from multiple angles. We're gonna talk a little bit about psychology, a tiny bit about neuroscience. I'm not a neuroscientist, but you know some things I learned along the way. I'll be sprinkling a little spirituality, some trauma research, just so you can get a truly understanding about how just waiting it out is the biggest lie we've ever been told. Okay. And so, if time healed all wounds, therapists would be out of business. Like we wouldn't have any clients and people in wouldn't be in therapy at 50 still sort of trying to figure out why they sabotage their relationships or why they shut down emotionally, why they can't seem to shake that constant maybe nagging anxiety or depression or whatever else, right? So time does not heal trauma. What you do with that time does. So that's very key. And I want y'all to just write that down. If you're taking notes, kudos to you. I'm going to say it again. Time does not heal trauma. What you do with that time does. So if you think about it like this is a simple analogy. If you were to break your leg and you just waited for it to heal without a cast or even rehab, like going to physical therapy, sure, you know, the bone might fuse back together, but it probably will heal wrong, right? You might have a little, what you call that? A little, I was gonna say pimp walk, like you know, you just kind of like this, right? So you might be left with some pain, some stiffness, and a limp. There we go, limp walk. And so trauma works the same way. If you don't actively process it, it doesn't just go away. It actually reshapes your nervous system, literally. It buries itself deeper and it manifests as some of the things that we already talked about chronic anxiety that you can't explain. Like, I don't know why I'm anxious. I've had clients who are like, you know, I don't know. I was a little anxious today. Nothing really happened, but I started being anxious. And so even like things that come up like relationship patterns that almost seem like deja vu, like I kind of been there before, I did this already, like I said, I've had these conversations before, I've had this feeling before, and it doesn't feel good. And of course exhaustion, like chronic fatigue, muscle tension, even digestion issues that maybe doctors can't really fully explain. And so avoidance often masquerades as healing, right? Giving it time. I'm just going to put this away for a little bit, put it on the shelf. But here's the trap that most people fall into. They mistake avoidance for healing. And so they tell themselves, like, I just need a bit more time to get over this. And then 5 months, a year goes by, and it's like, you still talking about that thing that happened in 1999? Anyway, or you'll say things like, I'll deal with it later. And then later doesn't come because life happens and we all get busy and things pile on and it gets pushed down underneath the subconscious. I always say things like, I'm too busy to process all of that right now. I definitely hear that a lot with clients who feel that their lives supersede their mental health. And so, you know, they use busyness as a form of deflection. So you might be saying that yourself. I've definitely said it in the past, right? I just too busy. When I think about when I moved to Thailand in 2016, that was me totally running away. I bought a one-way ticket and I was out of there. But there, wherever you go, there you are. And so all that grief, all of that anxiety, depression just followed me overseas. And I had nowhere to go. I had to actually face a lot of those things because I wasn't as busy as I used to be. I wasn't overworking. I had a lot more time. I had the pace was a lot slower. So all the things that came up to the surface, uh, I had no choice but to deal with it. So there was no running away from any of that. So let me ask you this question. Have you ever convinced yourself that you were healing only to realize later you were just avoiding the hard stuff, right? If so, again, you're not alone. This is something that we've done. Everyone is sort of guilty of this behavior. And so hopefully today we're going to change some of that, and it's going to encourage you to, over time, face some of the hard stuff at your own pace, of course, and in a way that kind of works for you, right? Because everyone's different in how they sort of deal with these things. So let's transition into the neuroscience of healing and how rewiring the brain is so important. So one thing I want to make clear is that trauma rewires your brain for survival, not change. So if you experience trauma, it doesn't help you change. It just helps teaches you how to survive in a very stressful situation. And because that imprint is still there with you. And so anything that's similar to that imprint, it's going to do what it does, protect you, shut down, all the other things. And so most people think that healing is about thinking their way out of pain, as I talked about, like intellectualizing things. But here's the truth: trauma isn't stored in your thinking brain, it's stored in your body. And if you've ever read the book The Body Keeps a Score, I definitely don't recommend it. It's a clinician's book. I don't necessarily recommend it unless you're in therapy or you're already doing some deep work or you've done some deep work. And even if you've done some deep work, it's a very triggering book. It even triggered me. And I was just like, damn, I still have stuff to do. Still have stuff to work through. But he really goes into detail of how that happens and what happens to our bodies with trauma that is unprocessed. And so you cannot logic your way out of a body based experience. And so it's like the idea when you repeat affirmations, hoping that they work, but deep down, you didn't feel any different. I'm no longer sad, whatever. Like, I am happy and graceful, like all those things. Like, I'm no longer fearful. I do believe there are power in words, but when you're beginning the healing journey, it needs to be a compliment. It can't be the thing that you do because now you're just sort of like bypassing all that. And so healing isn't just about words, although changing the way you speak to yourself or others is a positive does have a positive impact, but really it's about engagement with your nervous system. And it's something I always talk about is the nervous system. A lot of times that is the missing piece for a lot of people. So one of the things I do with my clients is like we talk a lot about like how to do things to soothe, right? To bring your nervous system into a state of safety so that you can actually handle a lot of those things. And I think about like plant medicines, and I'm about to talk about neuroplasticity, but when I've done a lot of enough plant medicines to help me sort of deal with a lot of my trauma. And one of the things that it does is that it literally rewires your brain, changes your DNA, and basically creates more space for you to allow your trauma to process. And so if plant I'm not advocating plant medicines because it's not for everybody, but that is a one path to sort of reset your nervous system in different ways. But there are other things that you can do as well, and we may or may not get into it. Actually, we are going to get into it, but briefly. No, I'm not going to do a whole session about it just because we're short on time. But one thing I talked about neuroplasticity, and if that's something that is a new term for you, it's really just like how flexible your mind is, like your brain literally. So when each time that you do something different, opposing whatever, because our brains get stuck in a trauma loop. So each time you do something different, you literally change the pathways to your your brain, the wiring in your brain, and it becomes more malleable and becomes more flexible to challenges over time. And so your brain is constantly creating pathways based on repeated experiences. So the more you repeat a thought, reaction, a belief, the stronger the neural pathway begins. So trauma creates a deeply worn in path. It's like deep grooves in your psyche, one that often defaults to fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, which I won't get too much into, but I'm somebody that used to take flight. So, too difficult, too hard, I'm out. Some people freeze and they just like, I would do that sometimes too when things are too, uh, like just have a hard time communicating or articulating my thoughts. And then some people fight. They get wild. They give you verbal lashings and maybe even it gets physical. And then I mentioned fawn, and fawn is more about like the people pleasing aspect of that. And so if you think about it like this, imagine a dirt road that is imagine a dirt path in the woods, right? And the more you walk it, the clearer it gets. So trauma forces you to walk the fear path over and over again until it becomes automatic. And so you can see how like this stuff is deep work. You cannot heal from a lot of this stuff through passivity, right? It has to be intentional and it has to be active and not the productivity like habitual ways that we've been conditioned to believe in a different kind of way, which, if you've watched my videos enough, then you already understand what I'm talking about. Got something in my eye. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions so far. I'll try to do my best to kind of answer it and and do the live. Let me take a little sip. So basically, when you're triggered, your brain doesn't ask, is this logical? Let me observe. Let me take a second. It just kind of fires up same old stress responses, right? Things that it's accustomed to doing or things that you have been doing sometimes since childhood. And so I want to do a quick check in. Have you ever overreacted on something small, then later thought, why didn't I react? Why did I react so strongly? Drop a two in the chat if you've been there. I definitely was emotionally reactive myself. Like a lot of things I take so personal, I just would just go into overdrive. And over time, I had to really reset my nervous system to not do that, so that I could, be able to stay centered in a very emotionally charged conversation. And it's not easy to have difficult conversations, and so or to be in different difficult spaces, but it's really about retraining your mind to be able to withstand that kind of intensity, which is absolutely possible, y'all. So the path to healing is not passivity again, it's rewiring yourself through felt safety. And so what I mean by that, if trauma rewires the brain for danger, healing must wire the brain for safety, but not through thinking, through experiences. And so the key shift, safety has to be felt, not just understood. Like we know, like we have to stay safe, but like how does it feel to stay safe? What does that look like? What does that feel like in my body? Those kinds of things. And so how do we do that? Some of the things I mentioned earlier was like um the practices to help sort of reset your nervous system, breath work. Like I really do say the same things all the time because they work. Okay, they really do. And obviously, find the things that fit for your lifestyle. But these stuff has been proven to work, and it'd be interesting to be get curious about it and see how if you were to do some of these things over time, how would you feel? Right. And so breath work, because that signals the brain that you're safe. So there are certain breath work practices that you can do that immediately resets your mind and your body, like within seconds. And imagine what would happen if you did that all the time, over time, maybe even a few times a day, right? And you already know mindfulness and somatic practices brings the nervous system out of hyper arousal, which is basically means like you're always kind of like stressed, and you're just like always waiting for the shoe to drop, and you're just tense, right? And so embodiment work that allows the body to process trauma instead of looping in thought. And so embodiment work could just be like therapeutic massages, that kind of thing. It could even be acupuncture. It could be dancing, movement, shaking, all those kinds of things. And so, let me ask you, have you ever tried to think your way out of stress, but your body just wouldn't cooperate? You're like, okay, I'm sitting there. Okay, just feel safe. Just, feel happy. Like, nah, nah, I ain't gonna work. That's just proof that healing isn't just a mental game, because it's it's trying to get the body and the mind and the soul and the spirit all working in harmony in unison. And so it's a full body experience, a full body process. And so I'm going to transition briefly into one of my favorite psychologists, Carl Jung, and shadow work, and how the unconscious controls us. And the reason why things still come up for us is because your unconscious mind is literally running the show. Even when you think you're in control, like it may seem like you got it all together, but deep down there are some things that like are being done on autopilot that you might not even realize. And so Jungian psychology teaches us that when we don't examine, teaches that what we don't examine controls us. So if we're not looking deep enough, they're already taking the lead. They're already making decisions, that trauma response. And so our deepest fears, wounds, and suppressed emotions don't just disappear, y'all. They live in the shadows, the unconscious part of our psyche. So the goal of all this is to bring a lot of this stuff to the surface. So until we actively face them, they show up in ways that we don't expect. So, quick gut check with y'all. Have you ever been irritated by someone only later to realize they were just reflecting something in you that you didn't want to face? I've definitely been there where um, I don't know if I have an immediate example right now, but we do a lot of projection. And so it could be something like, are you feeling tired today? You want to go home? We talk, maybe you're talking to your partner when in actuality, you're the one that's feeling tired and cranky and all this other stuff versus just you saying it, those kinds of things. That's a surface level, example because I just don't have one on top of my head. But the next thing, again, we talked about projection, but like the shadow projection is really the mirror that you can't escape. And so people are reflections. They mirror everything to us, our kids, our coworkers, even the stranger on the street, at the convenience store. All of them are just mirrors, mirroring back to us maybe the things that have been working really well and then the things that still need more growth, right? Growth areas. And so there are times maybe you've judged somebody for being lazy only to realize you struggle to give yourself permission to rest, right? And so it's kind of like that dichotomy, that paradox that you might be in. And so that's shadow projection when we disown a part of ourselves and project it onto others. And so if you judge people for being too emotional, you probably suppress your own emotions. And I hear that a lot from clients who say, like, they're always, my family members are calling me sensitive. Like I'm too sensitive about this, too sensitive about that. And whenever I hear that, I'm like, people who say that are uncomfortable with their own emotions, period, right? They are used to suppressing them. They have no connection or very little connection since, I don't know their specific circumstances to their emotions. So they'll make judgment calls like that, right? Projection. And or if you criticize others for bragging, you might be afraid to fully own your own accomplishments, right? Like, why are they always bragging? Well, do you brag on yourself? Because if you did, it wouldn't bother you much, right? If you feel triggered by someone's confidence, your shadow might be holding you back from expressing your own power. So if someone's like, man, they're just too big, they're too loud, they're too this, they're like too intense for you. Well, in which areas in your life are you playing small, right? How are you not owning your own personal power? Those kinds of things. So the truth, right? The truth is that what triggers you in others is often what you're rejecting in yourself. So, right now, think of one trait that really triggers you in other people. Drop it in the chat. No shame. We're all on this together. I've definitely been there and I've had to reassess my own stuff, right? But as you can see through this entire live, healing is not passive, right? It's very active, intentional, and it's doing things on purpose, talking about things on purpose, as much as you can, right? Because sometimes things can be too overwhelming, too intense. So it's like, in what ways can I do it? And I always say, like, in what micro ways can I practice some of these things? I tell my clients so that I can kind of build a tolerance to handle some of the most difficult things that are happening in my life. And so, When it comes to the shadow stuff that comes up, the projection, it's all about bringing the shadow to the light. Like I said earlier, bringing everything to the surface and looking at it without judgment, right? And saying, okay, what's going on here? And getting curious. Like curiosity is really, to me, the biggest underestimated emotion or approach to healing. Use curiosity because it kind of eliminates sort of the heaviness around like what's really happening or what's going on with you and so forth. So again, you can't think your way through the shadow. You just have to engage in it, right? You have to see what it's trying to tell you. And so some things that you could do to begin doing some of the stuff, because I don't like to leave y'all empty-handed. Sometimes I feel like I'll be giving y'all lots of reflection questions, things to think about. And it's not about doing everything all at once, because like the healing journey, this is a long game. This isn't like something that is done overnight. We're not going to fast track all of this. Some things, sometimes we have powerful insights that like literally changes us within like a few days, a few weeks, a few hours sometimes. But we also have to integrate a lot of things that we learn, and sometimes that takes time. Anyway, so how to start doing shadow work today, very briefly, if that's something that's new for you, or if it's something that you are looking to reconnect with. Track your emotional triggers. Take a moment to see what comes up for you throughout the day, because there are clues to unhealed wounds. They leave us breadcrumbs. Another thing is number two, examine your relationship patterns. Where do you repeat the same cycles? Like, do some reflection. Some of us jump from relationship to relationship, even friendships. Like, how where are some of the patterns that you're noticing that's kind of like getting you into like jams, and see how you can sort of break that. And lastly, do inner child work. This is something that I also talk a lot about. Meet the unmet needs that created your deepest wounds. You will listen, you do inner child work like you're halfway, literally there, wherever there is. But that is such a huge part of this journey. And so, one of the things I used to resist slowing down because I just, it's like that immigrant thing in me. I used to work a bunch of jobs and do a bunch of things and say yes to a whole bunch of things. And so when I came to Thailand, it was really hard for me to slow down because my nervous system was like this. So the slower pace really caused me more anxiety. It made me feel more depressed because I was like, am I not being productive? Like, should I be doing more? All of those things. And so I just realized that, my shadow self, that part of me was just afraid of being quiet and super still. And I'm already a quiet kind of person, but to be still in the stuff without trying to make meaning, without attachment, all those things, it's hard. And I used to think resting too much was like me being a failure, like not being productive enough. And so when I started facing a lot of this stuff, I just really slowed down so much that, I'm looking at myself, I'm like, wow, where else can I slow down some more? So let me ask you, what's one area of your life where your past wounds are still shaping your present? Just drop it in the chat. Let me know. And so let's wrap this portion up a little bit. This is how we go from surface level to below the surface level healing. This is how we stop waiting for time to quote unquote fix us, heal us, and start actively transforming. And so just let me know how this is landing for you. What's clicking, what's coming together for you, what are some things that you're interested in trying out, and see, where that takes you. And let's see, I kind of talked about this already. Um, yeah, I won't go too much into that. Talked about that. I'm going through my notes, y'all. Bear with me. Yep, we talked about that. So let's talk a little bit about. Let's go into a little spirituality because we're almost towards the end here. Um, I'm sure some of you might have heard like the alchemical process of healing, and maybe you haven't. It's just what that basically means. It's just ancient wisdom. If you've read the book Alchemy, it's a great book that will literally teach you in a short and easy. It's a short book, easy to read. And It's going to show you what this whole process means, but essentially it's ancient wisdom that has been telling us this for centuries. Healing is alchemy. It's not about erasing pain, it's about transmuting it. So alchemy is about taking something and turning it into gold, essentially, right? Gold, the metaphor. It's turning pain into power. It's turning pain into wisdom, those kinds of things. And, I don't know if you've heard the phrase, you have to feel it to heal it. Like, if you don't feel it, it ain't healed. It's not just a saying, that's like the alchemical truth of it all. And there are three phases of alchemy and healing. I'm not going to go too deep in like some of these like dense words, but you start with the darkness, which we talked about, the shadow work. And so when you're facing the pain head on, there are no distractions and no avoidance. And then the second stage is the purification stage. This is a releasing of the shame, the guilt, the false stories, the false beliefs, the narratives that we've just sort of carried over the years. And then the integration part, which integration can sometimes last a lifetime because you're still kind of integrating a lot of the insights that you learned. It's coming out on the other side with wisdom, strength, clarity, confidence, resilience, all of those things. And so if you think about a major breakthrough in your life, you didn't get there by avoiding discomfort. You got there by going through it, by acknowledging it, working with it, seeing what's going on. And so I'm wondering, just a quick check in with y'all, have you ever looked back on a painful experience and realized it was just actually like the turning point for something greater? And you're like, you look back, you're like, oh, that's why that happened. I'm so glad that happened because had that not happened, then I'd still be in that situation or circumstances. So drop a one in the chat. Let me know if that felt familiar to you. I never know where to look in these cameras, so hopefully I'm not looking all weird because I can't really see myself. Anyway, so let's see. So the great work of healing is, again, it requires effort, but not like, because when we hear effort, it's like, oh man, this is so much work. Not that kind of effort. I prefer to say intentions, being intentional, and it it needs engagement, the willingness again to face uncomfortable truths, that sort of thing. And so, get curious about some of the emotional patterns that you've ignored, but deep down, needs your attention because it's through that radical honesty without like shame, judgment, that is going to actually release you and free you. Okay. And so I do want to take a moment to talk about resistance. I kind of mentioned it earlier because, often that's where I end up heading in that direction. It's like resistance, inner child, shadow stuff with my clients. And, I'm not going to go too much into it because you can go check out, I've had two playlists and a bunch of videos about this. I mean, over 300 videos. Wild. I'm like, when did that happen? When did I have 350 videos? Anyway, I think it's 350. I'm not sure. But anyway, so why do we tend to, and not say always, but some of us tend to resist the very things that could help change our lives, help heal us, make our lives better. It's not random. It's not because you lack willpower. I did a whole video about that. And I'm actually gonna be I might be doing a webinar about this in a few weeks, but it's because your mind sees it as a threat. And if this is a thing for you, we definitely need to join my resistance reset 8-week live program that's beginning March 24th. If you're not on the newsletter, get on the newsletter so you can have all the information. There'll be a link in the description below so that you can find out more information about it. But this is going to help like blow this door wide open for you in a way that allows you to move through any of the resistance that you might be experiencing in your life, because resistance isn't like a sign to stop, because sometimes we feel the resistance and we just stop and we do other things. It's really a sign to lean in. It's like, the moment you sit down to journal, but you're like, oh, I'm so tired. Let me get a snack. Let me take a 5-minute nap. Oh, let me go do some laundry. Let me clean the house, or let me go for a walk. Well, I guess going for a walk can help you reset yourself. But you got to check in to see, is that avoidance? Or maybe, like, I'm gonna meditate. but then your brain says, "Oh, not the right time. I don't have enough time to meditate. Like that's just going to take too long." And really, it might just be that your nervous system is going to take too long to settle down. And there are things that you could do before you even begin to meditate to get yourself to this resting state so that you can actually, enjoy that meditation. Um, and maybe you commit to therapy. I've definitely had clients who came for a few sessions and disappeared. It happens. I've definitely done it in the past, like when I was in my healing journey, and because it 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 gets difficult, right? And so a lot of excuses can take precedent over your mental health, right? Like I gotta work right now. I'm just focusing on work. I gotta make more money. I need a second job. All those things that come up, and so none of this stuff that happens is random. It's resistance, it's methodical, and it's something that needs your attention. So drop a two in the chat or raise your hand in the chat and let me know if you've ever told yourself, I'll do it later. And later it actually never came. Actually never did it. I definitely been there. But resistance is just fear in disguise. And so fear isn't the enemy. It's just a signal that you're about to grow. That's it. And so let's make this real for you, right? And so write down one healing action you've been avoiding. Something that you know that like is going to nourish you that you've been avoiding to do. Maybe it is calling that therapist. Maybe it is getting that book that you know could probably change your life right now if you started to read it. Maybe it would be like getting a massage. I don't know, anything. It could be like having a hard conversation, implementing the boundary that you know you need to implement. And maybe it's just sitting with your emotions for once, right? Instead of distracting yourself. Things like that. And just drop a one in the chat if you're ready to commit to that process. Okay. All right. Almost nearing the end. I do want to talk a little bit about karma and energy work, and how patterns repeat. If this is not your jam, no worries. No worries. You could skip over this. Or, like my partner says, she says, eat the meat, spit out the bones. And this is not about like religion or any of that stuff. It's just, often I think people misunderstand karma, saying like, it's punishment and you're gonna get yours, that kind of thing. And karma isn't that. Karma is about things that are unfinished. And so when things are unfinished, there's a repetition to it. It comes back, right? The reason it comes back around is because it's unfinished. It's not because it's punishment. And so if you've ever felt like you attract the same type of relationships or you keep running into the same challenges, no matter how much you try to change, you're kind of stuck in this energetic loop. And so if you think of karma like a playlist stuck on repeat until you actively change the track of that song, that music, that song and dance, the same situations, emotions, and lessons will keep playing. Not because the universe is punishing you. And I did a whole video about this. Like the universe is not punishing you, y'all. Please, it's not. It's because you just haven't made a different choice yet, right? In order to get a different result, and I know this is a quote somewhere, I can't remember. You just have to do something different, right? And it's not easy. I know that, and it could be something small, but something has to interrupt and disrupt that loop. And so, um, how do you break the loop? There are three things that you can actually do really quickly. So, transformation isn't just about realizing a pattern; it's about interrupting it. Just like I said. So, um, the first thing is identify the pattern, name it, own it, call it out. No judgment, no shame, none of that stuff. Just like, oh wow, this is interesting. This is what's coming up for me. And number two, take one new action that disrupts it. Just like I said, do something differently. Do the opposite of what you normally do, right? And number three, reflect on how your energy shifts. Even small changes starts a new cycle. So if you did something and your energy is a little bit different, highlight that. Like, make that a big deal, right? Um, and so let me know in the chat below what is one small action that you could take today to break a repeating pattern. Okay. And we're at the end pretty much. So the way that I want to end this is I want to remind you, and I did a whole video about this as well. I don't know where it is. It's somewhere in this playlist, but It's the hero's journey. You are the hero of your own story. And this is your call to engage. Healing is the ultimate hero's journey. If you've watched any movie, every hero goes through some sort of um, circumstance that is calling them to change. So every myth, every great story follows the same structure. Call to adventure. You realize something needs to change, right? The road of trials and tribulations. You face challenges, resistance, discomfort, all of the above. Like sometimes you go to the edge, like you just don't think that you can actually come back because you've had experienced so much trauma, so much loss, like there's just no way. But then there's a return. You emerge transformed, right? Wiser and stronger. And if you think about Neo in the Matrix or Simba in the Lion King, they couldn't become who they were meant to be without going through the darkness. Okay. And so here's what most people get stuck on: they hear the call, but they resist the journey. And so they get stuck there. Years pass, life continues because life is going to go on with or without your participation. Life will be more pleasant if you participate. It might not be easy, but it will be more pleasant. But so let me ask you, where are you in this journey? Are you aware, type of one, if you're at the call to adventure? Like you're aware something needs to change, but you're not sure how to do it. Number two, are you on the road of trials? Are you in the messy middle doing the work, right? Or number three, have you come out to the other side, right? I always say, see you on the other side of change because that's the return, right? And you've done the work and you're stepping into your new self. Now, that doesn't mean that you ain't going to get more challenges, right? Because as you sort of quote unquote level up, and not level up in like the matrix conditioning kind of perspective, but as you strengthen, new challenges come. But they come in a way that you're really already well equipped to sort of deal with them. So you're not going to respond the same way that you would have 10 years ago or whenever before you started your healing journey. And so, again, drop a one, two, or three in the chat to let me know where you're at right now. And more importantly, what action are you going to take to move forward? All right. So, this is my final call. And if you've lasted this long, you're amazing. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate all of just I get emails, even some comments, and that, the stuff is hitting home because I really want people, especially now more than ever, to really double down on their healing journeys because life is getting more interesting and the world is getting more interesting. And I actually just did a video about like how the world is changing and my take on it. And I really just want you to feel better. I want you to live a life that you absolutely love, that you can wake up to and it feels good to you, right? I think we all deserve that. Anyway, so healing is an active choice, it's intentional. And so your wounds don't dissolve with time, they dissolve with engagement. So this is a recap: with conscious effort, with courage, compassion, all of the stuff that's required to help you sort of move through this journey. So if you wait for healing to just happen, nothing gonna change. I'm gonna sip my tea on that. It's cold down. It's cold down, y'all. Even if you commit, even in small ways, you start to rewire your entire system. Okay. So your three-step active healing plan, your three-step active healing plan: awareness, step one; disruption, step two. So awareness, identify the cycle that you're stuck in, name it, own it. Disruption, take one new action that interrupts the old pattern, even if it feels uncomfortable, like even if you just do it 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, that sort of thing. And step three, which is the one that takes a little while, but this is what it's about. It's about integrating all of the wisdom. It's about wholeness, right? It's about unifying everything that feels a bit fragmented in your life, and repeat this new action enough times so that your brain and your body create a new pathway so that all that integration can actually take place. And this, my beautiful people, is how you create real transformation. And so ask yourself, am I waiting for healing to happen to me, or am I actively participating in my own transformation? So Drop one insider action again that you're committed to doing in the comments or in the chat. And if this resonated you, and if this resonated with you, hit the subscribe button because I'm just getting started. You know what I'm saying? Like this year, I ain't messing around. This year, I've been a little here and there, but there's something feels different for me this year. So I'd love to take you on that journey. And again, if you really want to go deep, join my resistance reset program, 8-week live coaching where we do a lot of this stuff together. It's going to be small group. Like it's not going to be a bunch of people, even if it's 5 to 10 people, 20 max, I'm good because of how much energy I'm going to pour into this. And because I really want some of y'all to get past some of the resistance in your lives, to really get clarity, to feel confident about your lives, to take the next step because we're gonna be here. We might as well enjoy it. You know what I'm saying? All right. So just know that I know you feel stuck, but there are options for you. You're not broken. We just stuff happens, right? And it's now our turn to be responsible towards our healing, right? To take that power back because when we don't, we're literally giving that power away. And so again, the next step is yours. And that's really all I got. Again, I'm so thankful that you joined me for this live. Again, if you are part of the replay gang, just let me know in the chat below. And I will see y'all on the other side of change. Definitely join the newsletter. There's going to be some more things coming up. And I'm actually going to be having a guest next week sometime. I'm not sure when. And so I'd love for you to be a part of that conversation. And that's it. Yo, stay connected, stay in touch. And yeah, peace out. And I'll see you on the other side of change.